Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron.
In our years, Aaron, we've inherited, I guess, what you could call a legacy code base.
That's a nice word for it, legacy.
Yeah. And that means a lot of different things. I think one common trait I've seen in a lot of legacy code bases is there are little to no tests as part of the code.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're not only coming into something that's undocumented, old, but if you make changes to it, you're always afraid you broke it. So I know we've in the past sort of started when you're modernizing a legacy code base, one of the things we start with is by getting some semblance of test coverage. Mm-hmm. And just want to throw that out to you. Like what's a good strategy you find for diving into a code base like that and getting those first few tests written?
Sure. So I think one thing to keep in mind is what's important about this code base is this code base probably supports a business, and so therefore it supports business processes. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that we want to make sure that do not break if we're going to make some sort of change. Our job is to come in and make the code better, but really the business cares about, is their business still working the same way, or is it faster, that kind of stuff. But it can't not work. You can't just say, oh, I was upgrading PHP and now you can't sell your product, but it's fine.
You can't check out, but it looks better.
Yeah. But it's got the newest tailwind, so it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that the first important thing is to make sure that you're considering adding tests that test business processes. Okay. And so that usually means some sort of like end-to-end or feature test or something like that. You can accomplish that in a number of different ways. You can use a tool like Selenium or Cypress and kind of approach it directly through the browser. A Selenium, you could do some sort of programming in, even PHP unit and run those tests, or you can use their plugin to record them. Cypress, you can, maybe hand it off to another team member too who knows JavaScript. If you don't know it that well, you can write those JavaScript-based tests with Cypress and see it happen in multiple different browsers.
Yep.
You can even use, Laravel Dusk or something like that, again, to kind of put it on alongside the product in the project and see how that would test the end-to-end processes. I think that would probably be a little bit later on down the line once you actually have maybe some Laravel sort of framework and scaffolding, right. Yeah. But it's still possible to use it on alongside of your project and test it that way.
Yeah, and the that's very practical. I agree with you as that's a good way to do it. The other thing I've found in a lot of these legacy projects is the methods you're trying to test are pretty interconnected and big. So even the idea of starting with unit tests is just sort of hard to contemplate because where do I even start with this? And it just becomes this whole exercise and roadblock. So the sort of the outside in or the integration testing where you're driving a browser just like a user would, there's a lot of return there on that.
Well, I think it's hard to even determine the first time through a code base what a unit of work would even be.
Right. Yeah.
And so when you click through the interface and it did a thing, you did a checkout, for example, you can be reasonably certain that did enough of the thing to be successful. And that's what you can write a test around. Because also when we're making our changes, I think we've all done it too, where you make a bunch of changes, you test it by hand, and you make that one last quick change, but you're like, I obviously didn't affect anything. So I'll just commit this and it's good to go. And lo and behold, it broke everything. And so even having these little tests that you can run, in an automated fashion over this legacy code base is good. Now, there are some things I think that we have to worry about, and I'll pose some of these questions to you, Joel, because I know you're very familiar with this, is how would I go about making sure that I'm not executing this code in such a way that it's hitting other production APIs and because when I download it locally, how do I know it can run locally?
Yeah, that's certainly a place to start, is you have to be able to run the code locally. But to your point, maybe this legacy code has things like sending an email or pinging some order update service or whatever, and those processes are hard coded. It's not like there's no built-in mechanism to say, "Oh, this is we're in a test environment now, so we'll send this to Mailtrap," versus like the live mail server. So yeah, that's really important to figure out. I don't know that I have a perfect formula for doing that, but a lot of times, in fact, I was just looking at a code base with this like a checkout type process that did some of these external third party interactions. And I just looked at the code. Like when I click this button, what is it going to do? And I kind of drilled into it. It's like, oh, that's going to send an email to the user. It's going to send an email to customer service. It's going to queue up a notification in Amazon, and that's going to do a bunch of things. And so I was able to figure out a bunch of places to kind of wrap those things, extract it into environment variables, and then I can more safely test and know that I'm not messing with production data. But yeah, you have to be, especially when you're first stepping into the code base, you have to be kind of meticulous to make sure that isn't happening. That's not a surprise you want.
I think there's been a couple examples of really difficult pieces of code that I haven't necessarily been able to follow through everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in cases like those, if you can get them running in something like a Vagrant based virtual machine or Docker, there are ways to turn off network connections and stuff like that too.
Okay.
Turn off outgoing connections. It's obviously harder to explain on this quick podcast, but you could Google like how to disable outgoing network connections and set up like a firewall that stops all outgoing connections. And therefore, when you're doing your work, then you'll know that it was never actually hitting anything. I mean, it's not great, especially if we have like mail trap and we want to go and connect to them. It'll stop that too. But at least it won't ping the production Stripe account with some big charge or something.
Yeah. Well, especially if it's depending on how thorny the code base is, that might be a good way of just kind of do a first pass to be like, oh, what are all the things I'm going to bump into? Extract those into variables that are environment specific, and then do one after you think you have it all. Do it one more time with that and make sure it didn't hit anything you weren't expecting. I like that approach. I expect a full report on my desk on how to set that up later today.
In the past, I've seen someone show me maybe code when I first joined the team.
Mm-hmm.
And they went through a whole process, and maybe I didn't have a chance to record it and follow it through, but I wrote down some notes. One of the things I like to do is take that time, then invest in writing one of those end-to-end tests, then and duplicate what they just did, trying to set all that stuff up. And I gained two things from that. One, I've now written a test that's good, and two, I understand what they did, and now it's fresh in my mind. I can ask some questions when I'm setting up my scenario, like, oh, I tried to do this, maybe I missed something or whatever.
Yeah.
Versus just trying to hope I just caught that when they showed me real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that idea of kind of reinvesting the time that you spend to learn something into something that's automated. I've even done it if I'm not quite as diligent as you in that scenario, at least to add it to the README or like to build a test plan document where it's like, okay, I'm going to come back and write more tests for this, but for right now, like here's the smoke testing happy path just to make sure it works and know how to capture that so the next person or me next week knows how to write those automated tests.
Right. Definitely me next week. After a long weekend, you're like, wait, what did I know about this project?
I've been there. So we've shared some good advice. I appreciate that. What though, if we had to get more specific? So we talked in general, like the style of test we do, but like literally what might be the first test you write or the first thing you do when introducing testing to a legacy code base?
That's a really good question. What I think I do is I start with the very simplest thing to make sure I can just do that. And the very simplest thing is I load up the homepage and then I click the about or contact page and I validate that worked. And maybe if it's a contact page, I submit the contact form. Now, maybe this is a whole site for checking out, doing e-commerce or whatever, and the contact form is one small little part. But now I've developed one test that's reasonably simple. And now I can basically put that in. I can start to build off that. The second area I'll focus on is either creating an account or logging in.
Okay.
Either one of those is usually, if you support that whole authentication piece as well is pretty important. People will be, I would say end users aren't happy with bugs, but they're really unhappy if they can't log in or they can't create an account.
Right. Yeah.
So those are the two, it's like just very easy top level navigation, and then maybe login and stuff like that. And then after that, once you got all that going, that's when you have to engage with the business stakeholders again and say, what is the most important thing that happens on this website?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's buying this. So, go check that out.
Yeah. So you're kind of building momentum. Like you're starting with a relatively easy test, which you're going to have some hurdles just to get it running in a test environment, but you're not like biting off the largest piece of the app, maybe the most important piece of the app to start, but starting simple and kind of letting that momentum build and add more tests over time. Nice. I've been spending a little more time than previous years doing schoolwork with my kids, one of whom is in first grade. And one of the things that's really hard to explain to a first grader is why words have letters in them that you don't say. All right. So like recently the word was should. Do you hear an L in the word should? I don't hear an L in the word should.
Should. Nope.
Should.
Yeah.
No. So you see the dilemma, but then it gets even weirder because that same day we were doing something related to the human body and it pointed out shoulder. So if you have the word should, which is spelled the same way as like the first part of shoulder, now try explaining that to a kid, why that one has an L in it, why they both have L's in it, but you pronounce it. So I guess the question for you, I've been thinking a lot about this, probably more than is healthy, but I only know English. I don't know if other languages are as messed up as English, but if you bounce into any weird English related things that have really either annoyed or confused you?
Well, I think I can say that I don't understand how to say and spell soldier. There sounds like there's some J's and stuff in there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Or judgment. Like it sounds okay, but why is there an E in there? And certain words we have E's, and like but I guess the one that has always been on my mind because so many people use it incorrectly and it just drives me absolutely insane is two and two.
Like
T-O.
Is that like the 90s R&B band Tony?
Who are you? No, T-O and TWO.
Yeah.
We couldn't think of different words.
Yeah, the thing with silent letters, I was puzzling on it, and I actually got in this rabbit hole on Wikipedia of all places, and I learned an interesting fact. In English, the only letter that is never silent is, drumroll, the letter V. Every other letter, they had examples where it was silent. So don't try to think of one because I did, and I never came
I know.
up with one.
I really want to think of one. No, I got to say that that does sound like a challenge explaining it to a first grader or many of the adults that listen to our podcast as well, especially if English isn't your first language.
Yeah.
I feel bad there too. I guess I don't really like silent letters, and that's why you'll find me ending most of my conversations like this. Bye! I know sometimes you wish that you could hear from us weekly. And if that's the case, I got something for you.
Head over to our website at nocompromises.io/tips to sign up for a free weekly newsletter.